we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, are having a real hard time right now. You know, we have grown into so many different, unique, varied identities of we. We found ourselves in this cultural struggle ever building, as even our classisms and other things are surpassing us now. We're worried about the youth, while the youth are accelerating and excelling. For many old boomers, you find yourself in moments when you want to talk down to the kids and tell them they need to slow down this, that, and the other, only to find that they know so much more that for many of us, we've only been allowed to learn once we went to some formal school. You know, met a little youngin', same age range and whatnot of my nieces and nephews. Just like my nieces and nephews, only to find that this guy was not just your typical knucklehead, but then start realizing that what we would call a typical knucklehead now has changed too. You know, he sat back and he's like, man, I'm one of the World Bank international lawyer type folk, living my best life right here, right now, and I see you. And that phrase is something that really stands out in what I'm saying here, because I've noticed it more than I think a lot of other people would understand why that means something. You know, for many of us that are still here, you know, that whole feeling of, man, we really, you know, in our last days, you know, means a whole lot right now, you know, and yet and still we've somehow culturally grown out of that old tradition of making sure that we prayed up, because we've outgrown the spiritual structure that was once set for a lot of us when we were more in mask. 2/3 of a human in the eyes of the Constitution. And yet it's only been a few hundred years. So it's still awkward when we're still right now in today's America and world struggling with the mere fact that we have been extremely maliciously miseducated. In some ways, while it might seem, you know, totally insulting, you know, we would have to sympathize with the mere fact that a lot of these other people who push this slave Bible and a lot of other things at us, and, you know, and supported this America being great again and the way it used to be, just due to the mere fact that they were built on the same ignorance that many of us now face today, as we make them even more nervous, because for many of us, we're also evolving faster. We're actually, you know, not just us, it's mostly our kids, you know, our little grandchildren are getting a hold of this new damn smartphone we just bought. You know, we remember rotary phones, and yet all of a sudden they get a hold of it. Poor child can't even doggone speak of the English yet. And yet more and more of us boomer types and whatnot find ourselves, you know, in a state of actually questioning these grandchildren or whatnot that don't even speak any English. What did you just do with my phone? How you do this? Some people will even go as far as to admit that they've got stories of having to take the phone all the way back to the phone store or something and ask them what they did. Even rare stories of, the report back, ma'am, I don't know what they did. I'm going to have to ask the guy back in the back. These are realizations that we're a little past prayed up right now. I think in a lot of cases we have to ease up and really be a little bit more focused on a realization that there's some things going on this earth right now and each and every day that's really doing a number on a lot of people's genetics, and even more so on a lot of the genetics that we've created in the midst of us trying to justify our own genetics. And yet we're still too healthy to understand how our new generations see this new world order of the ages that's already here. This age of Aquarius that the hippies, for one reason or another, way back in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, literally tuned in and tuned out, just out of the instinct of, oh, this is going to be great, and this, that, and the other, and we are now in a state where even them are having a real difficult time realizing that they're not out of shape and too old, but yet not 16 anymore, not that young and irresponsible anymore. And yet that education, that enlightenment had to been beat out of their system because they had 30, 40 more years to have to go through perpetuating this 1920s mentality that was created after the Reconstruction, when the best way for them to unite as white was to take upon the same shade of white, at least for a moment enough to identify with being on the right white side, and everybody had a white sheet. And that was the whole thing about it. It wasn't like they were ghosts and all this other metaphysical shit. When everybody had on the same uniform and you in the same mask, you look at them as people. Now we're wearing masks, and we're now starting to realize that, the more that we wear them, the less that we identify each other in any other manner other than careful enough to at least be concerned about them too. And not just be one of those, I just want to be seen for all my ignorance. Okay, that's fine. A lot of those people in those genetics are probably due to be extinct in the next 150 years, no offense. And yet, we the people, in order to perform the most perfect union, have to realize what the whole basis of why we are a union, and we support it as a whole, because we can't have generalized health care or anything else, or free labor, or, fair wages or anything else, unless we really understand how to respect the unionized mentality of the fact that we are all still above ground. And so we might as well do something with it other than covering our own butt and complaining about how ashy and chapped it seems to be, because, well, we're all dealing with the mere fact that, we still have the administration that in most cases we've voted out to some degree. We're moving on. We're trying to get past the other issues, but we still have to fix them first, and we have to live through them. Kind of like, when they put a bad tire on your car, you drive off and you realize it down the road, you still have to drive back on that bad tire and hope that you can get back to get it replaced. That's where we're at. Inside you is something blooming and and mutating. Don't you want to know what it is? Don't you want to know how brilliant and special or powerful you may possibly be capable of being, even if it requires you to coexist with others? If you do, welcome to the New World Order of the ages. And we, the people, are trying to form a more perfect union. Are you good?